300F. Just about every F you'll see has got the flight sweep deck lid. Did you ever notice a little hole right down there? That is for draining the water that would collect in this area. Well, did you ever wonder what's underneath it? This is the drain tube. This piece here would catch the drain hole in the hubcap, and then the long tail goes to the edge of the trunk ledge so that it drains any collected water. Except it doesn't work. Look at the size of the hole. Look at the size of the tube. There is too much friction in there for water to flow. The tube is going to run from up in here and down along here and exit here, which means any drain water would be coming outside the trunk lid, and away she goes. Welcome to the lab. We got our lab bottle of water. We got our test fixture. Let's go put some water. Any water going through it? See, the internal friction is just too high and water's not going through it. This one arrived Wednesday from Florida, and we're tearing into it to find out what's good and what's bad. This fender has got significant patching. That one seems to be okay. There is a rust issue with the floors. They were repaired quite some time ago. That looks great. Well, that's an old repair, but this is a fiberglass web that's been put in, and in that footwell and in that footwell. So we yanked the console and the interior and all the stuff out. The power top motor just clunks. There's something screwy with that ignition switch. You can't really, man, maybe you can see, but it's not centered. There's also something screwy in that with the key off, the turn signals work. So, and when you connect battery, there's a little spark when I don't see anything that's drawing. So I suspect, and we'll start with the ignition switch. The ignition switch in this car was messed up. But you can't mess up the wiring because there's a block that goes on here, and it'll only go on one way. But somebody had been in here and they put it back together off sequence. See this little pin right here? Well, that releases the tumbler, but only if you have the key. if you don't have the key, this pin will not push in, and you're sunk. But if you have the key and you turn it, then you can push that button down and retract. So, turn one, get a little, and you can push that down. Normally the key won't fall out, but this is worn so bad that the key doesn't stay in. Yeah, but normally the key's in it. All right. See, then you can pull out this assembly, which, of course, the key, and then under here, that's where all those lock pins go. That mate up with the bumps and valleys of the key. This is how a locksmith would change things if he needed to. And on the back, you see there's this tang. Well, so when you put the key in here and you turn the key, see, now you're rotating the tang. But there is a sequence to these. Because down in there, see it? There's a receiving piece. And what had happened is somebody had gotten this thing out of sequence, and the receiving piece was off. So essentially, this thing was always on accessory. So that will reassemble. Gotta have the key. There's a slot. See the boss right there at about 8 o'clock? Well, that's going to fit into this groove here. So there's only one way that this cylinder arrangement is going to go in. And if you have the key, then the little pin will depress. And she's back home. So there's accessory, there's off, there's run, and there's start. Let's see if this solves my electrical problems. Well, that solves some of my electrical problems, because when I had the key off, I would get turn signals. And so what it was thinking, well, it was actually on accessory. But now that I have it oriented correctly, no turn signals when it's off. And when I disconnect the battery, there is no arc, which means there's no draw. So now my next wrestle is to have to reinstall that. Oh boy. Something you'll find on F, G, and H's. See, it looks like somebody has cut off the seat mount. Well, they did, because the standard floor pan for the standard Chrysler would have one seat catcher like that positioned right here. But because F, G's, and H have that for the dual bucket seats, they cut that off and they welded in these two. And you can generally see that the welds on these are not as good as the welds on those, because that was probably done with a machine, and This is probably, you know, some guy doing it. Anyway, so here's our floor. And that is actually the H carpet. See the gold? So with the console removed, I'm able to get that back plate off, which is plywood. And it is got 2 Phillips screws, one on each end, that secure it to like up in places like that. You can kind of see the screw hole. We're doing all this because the power window motor is not responding. It's just clicking. I mean the power top motor. So we've got to yank that. And the only way you can do it is from this side, because see right there? That's the ground wire going to a screw. And the only way you can get to that screw is from this side. So while we're out, we're going to pull the power window motors and give them a fresh. So, you know, we'll be done by this time tomorrow. On the horn problem, there's your horn relay. This green wire is the feed to the horns. So if you can hit this wire with 12 volts from the battery and the horns blow, then you've eliminated that green wire and the horns. In my case, this wire was disconnected and this wire was disconnected. And I see this wire seems to have chafed. Well, you're not going to be able to see it down in there. So maybe there was a good reason. So I just ran 12 from the post. This horn blows. That one does nothing. So, and then I went to the, connected the, someone went to the horn ring, and this does blow. That tells me the horn ring, the contact, and the steering wheel ground are all good. And the relay there. So, need to get into what's wrong with that horn and what's wrong with this wire. Here's Gilt's drive shaft done. New grease, new boot. These were his clamps. They fit nice. New U-joint in the back. That's the side cups, because we're not going to put this on for a while. We've got work to do in the drive shaft. With easier to be out of the way. This is one of the bearing cups for the ball and trunnion, spare part. One of the, this is one of those balls of the ball and trunnion. A new old stock part that's kicking around. When we went to install the balls, it's not uncommon that you don't get things square and you get some of these pins to come out. Well, you see they got a cardboard collar in here for this one, for how they store it. If you take yourself a 10mm socket that fits right in there, and then you can line the pins in, and you can dress the back up pretty quick. It took us, I guess, 3 times before we got the pins in. First one went perfect. The other one, fuss, fuss, fuss. 7:45 in the morning. 14 degrees outside. The shop's down to 44. Got the heat on. Yesterday, we cleaned in various interior pieces with the Lexol. Boy, I tell you, that Lexol is great for cleaning. Now we'll hit it for the conditioner and put these away until we need them. Seat's coming along just fine. That's Lexol 2. Go put it away. Yeah, I got looking at this ignition key, and we figured out where my problems are. This is the one that was always falling out. Well, if you may not be able to see it, there is a fracture right here, and there's not enough material left for that pin to bite. Here, there, you see how you've got full threads there? Well, so that tells me this body is no good. I ordered a new exhaust system for the J, and it arrived. Innocent looking box, right? UPS. £73. Let's unpack it and see what we've got. Oh, well darn. 300J, you know, it won't have that kind of header pipes. I'm not sure which one is which here, but it's also missing the H crossover. Yeah, we'll have to get a hold of Classic. The tach drive cable is broken on this car, so get another one from Murray Park. Here's the old one, which goes down in there. Well, the question then comes, how do you get the old one out? How do you get the new one in? Let me tell you. I suppose you could yank like heck on this one, and there's a rubber grommet up in the floor under the console, which you could pull this through, but then how are you ever going to get this end started back? Who knows if this will work? Electrical tape, old, new, and we're going to try to pull it that way. Let's find out. We had a lot of success with the idea of taping the new cable to the old cable, but this is that distributor piece, and it's so big it's getting hung up down there. So we're going to cut it off, and that'll, we almost were able to get it. Well, that was way too easy. With that big piece removed, just taping it, and there's your new cable. Lightly grease. We used the bone straw grease. Nice and light. We got the tach cable routed. I ended up putting it under the carburetor to keep it away from the linkage. As you know, a normal J would have the ramps, it would go through the valley. But we hooked it up and the tachometer is frozen, which is probably why the cable broke in the first place. So we fixed that. Now we got something else to fix. Here's the tachometer out of that J that is seized. We'll send it off. There was a date on there. There we go. We'll send it off and get her working again.